Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFS Report. It is Tuesday, March the 11th. I hope everyone's having a fine Tuesday afternoon. I'm just trying to retweet the live stream before we go live. Screw it. We don't have time. We got 11 games slate in our hands today, so we got a lot of ground to cover. There's also some absolutely ginormous contests on DK tonight. So for anybody that is new to the show, tuning into this for the first time, welcome aboard. I'm sure we've got some new viewers today, just with all the big contests going on in DK today. So welcome in. We will break every game down, game by game. What we focus on is the analytics, the matchups, dig a little bit deeper than just the projections to find some advantages at 5v5, find some advantages on the power play, so on and so forth. But I'm not going to waste too much time. Zach Laing is my co-pilot today, as he always is. Welcome in, Zach. How are you doing on this Tuesday afternoon?
Brock, I'm doing good, man. A little disappointed in my Edmonton Oilers last night. Couldn't come up with the victory. I know you're a little upset with your Red Wings too. So hopefully this slate can be a little bit kinder to us, because it wasn't very nice to me last night.
Yeah, yesterday was brutal. Your Oilers lost, my Red Wings lost, and the DraftKings streets were pretty meh. So hopefully better things ahead tonight. If the Red Wings get 50 shots and lose again, I'm probably going to lose it. So Jeremy Swayman likely to get the start for the Boston Bruins. It's going to be Sergei Bobrovsky for the Florida Panthers. Tristan Jarry, after a strong performance in his return to the NHL the other night, starts again for the Penguins. Will be Ilya Samsonov for the Vegas Golden Knights. The New Jersey Devils will go Jacob Markstrom. Will be Elvis Merzlikins for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Ivan Fedotov gets the nod for the Flyers. It's looking like Anton Forsberg in the second half of back-to-back for the Senators. They did recall Levi Merilainen, although speculation is that he's just going to back up Forsberg to give Linus Ullmark an entire night off after last night's standout performance. Damn him. Pyotr Kochetkov starts for the Carolina Hurricanes. Will be Andrei Vasilevsky for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Connor Hellebuck versus Igor Shesterkin. I remember betting the under the last two times these two went head-to-head. And the score was 5-3. It'll be Philip Gustafson for the Minnesota Wild. Projecting to see Mackenzie Blackwood in the second half of a back-to-back for the Avs. Lucas Dostal likely to get the nod for the Ducks. It'll be Logan Thompson for the Caps. Kevin Lankinen starts for the Vancouver Canucks. Sam Montembeault confirmed to get the nod for the Montreal Canadiens. You've got Darcy Kemper starting for the LA Kings. Ilya Sorokin for the Islanders, at least likely on both of them. And then Alexander Georgiev confirmed to get the start for the Sharks, projecting to see UC Saros for the Nashville Predators. Let's get into it. It's a massive 11-game slate. Let's start with the Boston Bruins and the Florida Panthers. So, Zach, me and you were joking today. There's some very mispriced players, which we will cover on today's show, but one of which almost looked like it might be Brad Marchand. I was stunned. He was skating on the top line with Carter Verhaeghe and Alexander Barkov in the morning skate. And this is like days after they said he was going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks. I'm like, what is going on? Is he just going to go out there for the first faceoff and then call it a night so he can say he returned to Boston? He's not going to play. But he was $2,500, and that would have just absolutely broken the slate if he was $2,500 on the top line of the Florida Panthers. But the Panthers are massive, minus 200. Road favorite, 3.4 implied total for them. 2.4 implied total for the Bruins is the tied for the lowest on the entire slate. Pretty low event game, pretty brutal matchups, unsurprisingly, for the Boston Bruins. And then on the Florida Panthers side, pretty good matchups for their top six. So if you missed it, Aaron Ekblad was suspended for 20 games yesterday. So that's not really going to change things a ton for them. It's going to be a lot more like what we saw from them for the entire season until the Seth Jones trade. Just basically Seth Jones replaces Aaron Ekblad on the top pair. So Kulikov moves back up. Belinsky's moves back into the lineup. And then Seth Jones is going to be on the top power play unit. So Seth Jones, pretty interesting. I'm just going to start there because he is quite affordable tonight. He is only $4,500. He is projected to be the second highest owned defenseman on the slate, but really, really nice price tag on Seth Jones tonight. If you are stacking the Florida Panthers, he makes a very attractive play. Even if you're not, he looks like an attractive one-off play. Going to see a lot of minutes with Ekblad out. He's projected for 23 minutes, so much more in line with what we saw from him in Chicago. But matchup's pretty good for this top six for the Panthers. Top six that's been playing pretty well as of late as well. We know that this top line is great, right? You've got Barkov, you've got Verhaeghe, you've got Reinhart. They're unbelievable. Their metrics have been very solid this year. You honestly would probably expect more goals out of them than what we've got. They've disappointed us at times, but they've been in smash spots and they've smashed. The second line's a line that I've fallen in love with over the last few weeks. I've played them a ton because the shot volume you get from Maki Samoskevich and Evan Rodriguez at very, very affordable price tags is excellent. Samoskevich continues to skate on that top power play unit as well at 8.5% rostered. That's a line that I'm certainly going to get back to tonight for some value. They're $13,700 to full stack. Really, really nice price tag for them. The matchup is pretty good, not great, but I really like what we've gotten out of Sam Miskevich and Evan Rodriguez as of late. And then Sam Bennett, he's just been really steady for like a month, basically dating back to just before the Four Nations, had a great Four Nations tournament. He's picked up where he left off afterwards. So one of my favorite value lines on the slate tonight for sure. Florida 1 grades out 11th best at 20,100, a little bit more of a hefty price tag, but they're also seeing a decent amount of ownership tonight. The Florida top line grades out as the 4th highest projected line, and the Florida second line grades out as the 6th highest projected owned line. And then sandwiched in the middle of them is Boston 1, also in this game. So this game is drawing a ton of attention. We're going to focus a lot of our show on this first game here because it is a very important game for tonight's slate. Boston 1, they fully correlate on that top power play unit now. They've been really good, mostly David Pastrnak, but getting Geeky, who's been red hot, and Zach on that top power play unit fully correlated makes them a much more attractive line. The problem is both these teams have been extremely good on the penalty kill as of late, so that's going to zap a lot of the value for either power play tonight. The Panthers had a lot more success on the power play as of late, 11th best, but they do face a Bruins PK that has been red hot. Zach, let's get your thoughts on this one. Let's start on the Florida Panthers side of things because I'm assuming that's where most of your interest is coming in here.
Yeah, definitely. I echo your sentiments here about Florida 1 and Florida 2. Florida 2, you're getting, substantial salary savings. I love the shot volume we've been getting out of late from the second line, man. I mean, Mackie Samoskevich over his last 20 games, 10.6 shots on goal per hour. Sam Bennett, 14.9 shots on goal per hour, and Evan Rodriguez with 10 shots on goal per hour. Just huge volume coming from this line. And I think for me, I prefer this second line a little bit more to that top line, which is kind of funny because, even when Matthew Tkachuk is there on that second line, I always seem to lean a little more towards Florida 2 than I do Florida 1. And I think that's the way that I'm feeling here tonight. The salary savings are significant here. They have pretty similar matchups, pretty similar stats at 5-on-5, all things considered. I like the coin flip here going with this second line. You're still getting exposure to the top power play unit with Bennett and Samoskevich. I almost called him Bamaskevich there, like combining the two names. That's where my brain's at today, Brock. But yeah, pretty interesting spot for Florida as a whole here. I get why there's some ownership coming in on both sides here. I'll probably be around 10% on both lines, maybe a little bit higher on that second line or having some parts of that second line. You can always go the route of backing Samoskevich and Evan Rodriguez as well for about $8,100.
Yeah,
that's a pretty nice way to go too if you're looking to get yourself a little different from the field.
Sorry for clearing my throat there. I thought I was muted as well. I was just really excited to jump in to play devil's advocate here. We've got two teams that are playing extremely well defensively, and as I mentioned, both teams really good on the PK. So, if this is a game that maybe you didn't love coming in and were maybe swaying you back the other way, if you want to get off the chalk of this game, which again, it is quite high owned across the board, I guess it's a bit misleading because it's a lot of kind of just mini stacks. It seems like a lot of people leaving Verhaeghe off. You're getting about 10% Reinhart and Barkov. Most people are playing just Pastrnak, about 6% of the other two. And then the Panthers second line is mostly just Samoskevich and Bennett, who are on that top power play unit. So it's a little bit misleading, but still seeing plenty of ownership coming in. And both teams have performed pretty well defensively in their last 10 games. So to play devil's advocate, there is a path to where this game is lower scoring if you want to fade it entirely. I don't think it's really a terrible call. Obviously, some good goalies in this game as well. Sergei Bobrovsky might be my favorite goalie play on the entire slate tonight. So I'm definitely going to have exposure to him. I'm definitely going to get to some Florida 2. I'm definitely going to get to some Seth Jones. I probably won't play much Boston 1 at all just because of how much Bobrovsky I'm planning on getting to tonight. Any final thoughts on this game, Zach, before we move to game number 2?
Yeah, I also think, just speaking of that ownership, that's an interesting thing to point out there. And that's the reason why I like going the route of like a mini stack of Samoskevich and Evan Rodriguez, just getting you off of some of the chalk that people are kind of going to be building around. This game, as you mentioned too, doesn't have the strongest power play matchups or anything like that. So I'm comfortable building away from that sort of power play mini stack that I think a lot of people will be going to here tonight.
It's interesting because like the power play matchups themselves are obviously atrocious, but both teams take a ton of penalties and both teams. So, I mean, they're projected for two of the most power plays on the night. So it's like, yeah, the power play matchups might not be good, but if you give them enough chances, I'm sure, these units are talented enough to eventually convert. So you think. Okay, Vegas and Pittsburgh. The Vegas Golden Knights are minus 186 road favorites. 3.6 implied total is one of the highest on the slate. Is it the highest? It is the highest on the slate. 2.6 implied total for the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. Vegas is a team that I don't normally, I have struggled, I guess I should say, to get correct at times. But I have fallen in love with Vegas too. I've played them a ton. Hurdle and Dorofeev have been splendid for me. But tonight, this pricing that isn't changing has certainly changed on Vegas too. We've seen their price tag skyrocket this evening. You've got Hurdle up to 7,100 and Dorofeev up to 6,500. I think it's fair, right? Like, I think that's where they should be priced. The reason I played them basically on end was because they were just way too cheap. They were way too affordable. So a little bit more expensive to get to tonight. And the matchup for them looks much worse than Vegas 1. So if you're looking to target the team with the highest implied total tonight, it does look like Vegas 1 is the route to go. Their matchup, as we said here, they're going to see basically their entire night up against the Sidney Crosby line. The Sidney Crosby line has struggled defensively tonight, and they've given up 3.8 goals against per 60. So definitely a good matchup there for Vegas 1. I will say that we did see Ivan Barbashev going up to that top line about 4 or 5 minutes the last game. So I don't know if 100% of it's going to be Tanner Pearson that remains there, or if it's going to be Ivan Barbashev, something worth keeping an eye out for during the warm-ups. The Pittsburgh Penguins side of things is interesting. This top line is projected for 34% of their 5v5 ice time, which is obviously massive. The matchup with that Eichel line, though, not great. But because of the ice time, the Pittsburgh top line still grades out the second best line overall. Not seeing a ton of ownership. Ilya Samsonov just shut out the Pittsburgh Penguins in his last start. But this is a guy that has been far from consistent this year and far from consistent over the last number of years. So I do think it opens the door for Pittsburgh too to be a bit of a sneaky charts play tonight. In terms of ownership, they grade out where? Like 17th, 16th highest owned line overall. So I do think that they're pretty interesting. I do think obviously they've got plenty of upside. It's a line that's expected to play a ton of ice time tonight. It's also a Pittsburgh power play that does have a decent matchup tonight. The Vegas PK has struggled a bit. So I think Pittsburgh, like, again, if I'm building one lineup, Pittsburgh 1's not my favorite. But if I'm building 20 lineups, I'm taking some swings on them. I do think they're kind of an interesting low-owned spot tonight with Samsonov getting the nod in net. But as much as I want to play Vegas too, just because I always do, the matchup looks a little bit bleak tonight. The price tag is a little bit higher tonight. So I probably lean more towards Vegas 1, which grades out 19th best at 19,400. They're seeing a decent chunk of ownership, most of it coming in on Jack Eichel. But it's the highest implied total on the slate. Like, I feel like we've got to be getting to some Vegas here. They just don't grade out very well because they spread out the ice time so effectively.
Yeah, they really do. And I think that's the biggest dog with playing any Vegas on a regular basis, is it kind of makes it a little difficult to target. I also cannot seem to get Vegas right here as of late. If I play Vegas 1, Vegas 2 goes off. If I play Vegas 2, Vegas 1 goes off. So what I might do is just throw a single Vegas onslaught into my 20 max tonight and go that route. Stack up Eichel, Stone, Hurdle, and Dorofeev, and just try and find some value plays around them. I think there's a couple of decent options to do a build like that here tonight. The Penguin side of things, I definitely got some interest here in this top line. These three guys are always at their best, and the fact that they at their best when they're together, I should say, and the fact that they grade out as the second best line to target overall in the slate, that's really piquing my interest here. I think I'm going to be comfortable getting a little bit over the field here on Pittsburgh 1 tonight, playing 10% of them in my 20 max here. It looks like a good enough spot for them. Again, this Vegas side of things, it's just feeling a little difficult to nail down, and the pricing has become a little bit more restrictive on that second line. That being said, I almost am willing to kind of play them on their own as well. Like, Thomas Hurdle has been tremendous as of late. Over his last 20 games, 2.6 goals per hour of ice time against 1.8 individual expected goals. He is on an absolute heater, shooting like 30% right now, but he's got a solid floor with 8.9 shots on goal per hour. And then we call him Pavel Dorofeev for a reason. 10.9 shots on goal per hour over his last 20 games as well. So I think for me, the pecking order in this game would be Pittsburgh 1, Vegas 2, and then Vegas 1 in order of my preference for those three lines.
Take a look at the team trends chart here. The Pittsburgh Penguins have been one of, if not the worst 5v5 defensive team in the league over their last 10 games. So, there is reason to get to Vegas. Their numbers are insane. It's just hard to pin down. And I still think, I don't want to talk people out of Vegas too, because I do still think I'm going to get to some Vegas too. The matchup, again, doesn't look necessarily amazing, but they're not really seeing much ownership at all, and they have been red hot. And obviously the price tag has something to do with it. Hurdle at 7,100, but just 2.3% ownership. Dorofeev 6,500, just 2.7% ownership. It's a really good low-owned line. and they've been playing extremely well. The matchup overall from a team perspective looks extremely favorable. It's a Vegas team that's playing super well. So I'm still getting there. I don't think I've gone a night without playing Vegas 2 in a while. So I'm going to still be getting there. And as much as I like how Pittsburgh grades out in the charts, like, they haven't been producing much, right? Since the break, Sidney Crosby has 7 points in his last 9 games, but just 13 shots on goal. Rickard Rakell, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points in 9 games, just 18 shots on goal. Brian Russ, 1 goal, 2 assists in 7 games, just 14 shots on goal. Like, the floor is not great. The ceiling has been pretty low lately, and I trust the charts in enough to get to, maybe to 10%, but I'm not getting too carried away with Pittsburgh 1. But I do think that they do have the game breaking ability in a matchup with Samsonov here. That's fine. Any final thoughts on this game before we move to game number 3?
No, let's move it along.
Game number 3 is the New Jersey Devils and the Columbus Blue Jackets. A very interesting game here. We'll take a look at the trends chart here first. The Blue Jackets are plus 136 road dogs, the minus 151 home favorites for the New Jersey Devils. So the Blue Jackets continuing to struggle a little bit defensively, continuing to basically just play pond hockey. Really, really good offensive numbers, really poor defensive numbers. The Devils basically just middling across the board. They're not doing a whole lot of anything other than performing pretty well in the power play. Their power play does grade 3rd best tonight. They do have a really nice matchup there. The Blue Jackets, not so much. In terms of the 5v5 matchups for this game, it's really good on the New Jersey Devil side of things. As I mentioned, the Blue Jackets, not the best defensive hockey club whatsoever. The Devils are going to shuffle their lines up a little bit tonight, and it does make for some interesting stacks tonight. So you're still going to see Meyer and Hischier and Stefan Nation together, but Cody Glass, Jesper Bratt, Eric Howell is a new look line. Cody Glass is minimum priced this evening. Obviously not a guy that has a tremendous ceiling or hasn't had a tremendous ceiling this year, but at minimum price, playing with Jesper Bratt, I'm more than comfortable getting there at that price point, obviously. So I like a Cody Glass, Jesper Bratt mini stack. I brought up the defenseman charts a little bit earlier as well. And the highest owned defenseman, or projected highest owned defenseman on the slate, is Luke Hughes, who is projected for 13% ownership. He's obviously playing massive minutes with Dougie Hamilton out. He's on that top power play unit. He's just $4,200. I love that play. So I like getting to a little bit of New Jersey here tonight. It'll probably be mostly through that Cody Glass, Jesper Bratt, Luke Hughes combination. I think that's a decent little stack. The top line does draw a really nice matchup tonight. They're going to see a lot of that Adam Fantilli line. That Fantilli line has not been great defensively. They've given up plenty of chances. They've managed to give up just 1.3 goals against per 60 somehow, but this is a Devils top line that's been awesome this season, at least in generating chances, not always converting. I would like them a little bit more if Steph Nation was still on that top power play unit. They ran with Dawson Mercer there last game. That would make my interest in them a little bit greater, but still, you still got Hischier and Meyer there, so I don't mind the idea of a Hischier, Meyer, Luke Hughes stack either. You can include Steph Nation as well because he is just $4,000. So $17,000 to $17,300 to full stack them. That is the best line overall under $18,000 in terms of the charts tonight. I really like getting to some New Jersey 1 tonight. They are seeing a little bit of ownership. I also really like getting down to New Jersey 2, who are seeing a little bit less ownership. But I love this side of the game tonight. I do think this has the potential to be a pretty high scoring game. I've got some interest on the Blue Jackets side of things. But Zach, let's start with the Devils. Where are you coming in on the Devils tonight?
Yeah, I like them a lot here tonight. It looks like a great spot going up against Elvis Merzlikins. Obviously, New Jersey 1 grading out as the 5th best line overall to target on the slate. Seeing a decent chunk of ownership here, and I can get why. Nico Hischier is continuing to drive the bus there for them in a really good way. Stefan Nation continues to be productive. And Timo Meyer is a really interesting guy here. The price tag's a little bit high at $6,900. 8.9 shots on goal per hour of ice time. The one thing that's interesting about Meyer is he only has 1 5-on-5 goal in the 2025 calendar year. That is 1 5-on-5 goal in 25 games, going up against 5.67 individual expected goals. So I think this is a guy here who's really due for some goals to kind of break his way. And I think this is a spot where that absolutely could happen. So I have no issue here getting up to this top line. I'll probably include a little bit of Stefan Nation, same sort of a thing. A guy who's probably due for some more offense coming his way soon. I also like the idea of this Glass Bratt mini stack, or even just one-offing a little Cody Glass. Had a goal in his Devils debut on Sunday. This is a guy, even still, playing for Pittsburgh, some decent shot volume, 8.2 shots on goal per hour of ice time over his last 20 games. It averages out to about 2 shots on goal per game for him. So, if he posts a 0, I think you're fine because you're able to take some of that salary savings and use it elsewhere tonight.
I just want to go back to the Pittsburgh Penguins for a second because I don't want to misspeak and give away any incorrect information. Since the break, I was looking at only 5v5, and that's my mistake. Sidney Crosby does have 10 points in 9 games, but Raquel and Rust have still been lagging behind. Raquel does have 4 goals in 9 games. Rust just 5 points, 1 goal in 7 games. So a little bit better than what I had said, obviously, just looking at 5v5 production. From the New Jersey Devils side of things, the leaders in terms of individual expected goals since the break, Timo Meier, Steph Nation, Nico Hischier in that order. So that top line has really been carrying the water for them. Also, without Jack Hughes, they're obviously playing a healthy amount of ice time as well, projected for 29% of the ice time tonight. So really interested in them. On the Blue Jacket side of things have been pretty interesting. This Voronkov, Fantilli, Marchenko line continues to play really well. They're not going to see much ownership tonight. Columbus 2 grades out pretty well as well. Fairly priced, I suppose, with Kent Johnson 5,200 and Boone Jenner at 4,900. They're not drawing much ownership tonight either. Nobody seems to be playing the Blue Jackets, and I probably won't play a ton of them. I'll mix them in a little bit because they still are one of the highest scoring teams in the league, and we know we've talked about the road woes and all that, but then they go and hang 7 on the Rangers in the second half of a back-to-back the other day. So they do still have those games within them on the road. They can kind of pull them out. And when they see this little ownership, we've seen the Blue Jackets break more than enough slates tonight. So I don't mind at least getting to 5, maybe 10% of some combination of the Columbus Blue Jackets, just in case they kind of just go off. And we've seen them certainly do that before. And maybe tonight could be another one of those nights. And if you take a look at the raw projections, we still got Zach Werenski projected to be the highest projected defenseman on the slate tonight at just $7,600, which feels cheap compared to what he's been at some points this season. Zach, what are your thoughts here? Obviously the power play matchup is far from ideal. The 5v5 matchups are far from ideal. The metrics though suggest this is a team that is absolutely humming offensively right now. Even though they've scored 1.04 goals scored above expected and are shooting 15% at 5v5, they're still producing 3.2 expected goals for per 60. So this is an offense that's clicking, and it does feel like a decent low-owned spot if they can kind of figure out those road woes like they did the other night.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some interest here in the Columbus Blue Jackets. Again, the matchups aren't great or anything like that, but they do seem to be in a really interesting spot here for that top line. 14th best line to target overall on the slate, within the top 15, which is what I usually try and focus my lineups on. I also think this second line is a bit of an interesting play here as well. I mean, Boone Jenner has looked tremendous since coming back from his injury here, and Kent Johnson's on absolute fire right now. 1.8 goals per hour of ice time over Johnson's last 20 games. Boone Jenner, granted, only 120 minutes of ice time, 4 assists per hour, which are the only points that he's been getting here. No goals as of late for him. So I don't mind getting down there. And then, Matthew Olivier in the same breath. Again, tough guy, fighter here. Had 2 goals against the New York Rangers on Sunday. So helped me win a little bit of money. So I think I'm comfortable getting back there at 5% on Columbus 2 tonight. Definitely like Werenski as a defenseman play tonight at $7,600. That's a really nice price point for him there.
Adam Fantilli has been great, leading the way with 6 goals since the break. Also, nearly doubles the second place on the team in terms of individual expected goals. So he's been on a bit of a heater. He looks like the strongest play. Him and Werenski likely. From the Columbus side of things, I probably lean towards Columbus 1. I just like the offensive upside a little bit more, but Jenner and Ken Johnson have certainly looked great. Jenner's first goal is coming eventually. Okay, we've got the Flyers and the Sens. The Sens in the second half of back-to-back. So this is a Flyers team that we've mostly just targeted the top line, but they just are not scoring goals whatsoever. They've lost 4 in a row, I believe, and they've only scored 6 goals in those 4 games. So the offense is completely dried up. Against the Kraken over the weekend, I think that was Sunday afternoon, they looked lifeless. This is obviously a Senators team that didn't look necessarily great against the Red Wings last night, but Linus Ullmark did. But both teams really not generating a ton at 5v5. The Sens have struggled a little bit defensively. It showed up last night as well. But I'm not so sure that the Flyers are necessarily capable of taking advantage of it right now. The power play is an absolute travesty. They grade out with the 28th best power play as of late. I just don't know how much Philadelphia I'm going to be able to get to. The second line grades out in the top 10 thanks to a pretty decent matchup. They have a 46% matchup score. They're going to see the middle 6 of the Senators. Their offensive metrics have been stout. Mishkov, Couturier, and Owen Tippett. They're 16,500. They're not seeing much ownership. I don't mind taking a swing on them. in one lineup in a 20 max. Like that's probably the extent of it for me because they have been good. Mishkov's been playing unbelievably. I do think that the top line is obviously going to be in tough against that Stützle Kachuk line, that Stützle and Kachuk line. Interestingly enough, their offensive metrics are pretty bad, but their defensive metrics are simply outstanding. So probably, we like that Noah Cates line a lot. When the matchup lines up and stuff, this just does not feel like that night. So I'll probably sprinkle Philadelphia too in the mix with Fedotov getting the start for the Flyers. He did look decent in his last outing, but like this is a Senators team that is still interesting. Like I just said, though, the top line's offensive metrics are pretty poor, but they're seeing no ownership tonight. They are 20,800, so I kind of get it. And then Ottawa, too, seemed like a great value option yesterday. They kind of came through. It was kind of like a backdoor cover more than anything. They rate out 44th tonight, but they are still very cheap and seeing no ownership. Again, not going to get a ton of exposure to this game, I don't think. It feels pretty low scoring. But I'll probably mix in about 5% Philly 2, Ottawa 1, and Ottawa 2. How about you? Any difference here?
I think I agree with you in terms of just getting a little bit into the mix here. I think I've got a little more interest in this Philadelphia side than I do the Ottawa side, specifically around that second line. The offensive metrics have just been really killer here as of late for that second line. Obviously on a bit of a heater right now, but I think for me, I'll probably get to a mini stack of Owen Tippett and Matvei Michkov, and then I'll probably get to a mini stack of Philadelphia one as well here, probably around Noah Cates and Tyson Forrester, get some exposure to that terrible power play unit. Yay, that makes me feel really excited to do. But I think that they're fine to mix into the 20 max, which is what I'll be doing here tonight. I also don't hate the idea of getting a little bit of Ottawa 2 into the mix. I don't know if I'll necessarily get there myself because I feel like I've been bit a lot more by Ottawa than not here as of late. I'm also fine with just one-offing Brady Tkachuk at $8,200. Obviously, a guy who's got a ton of shot volume, 15.1 shots on goal per hour of ice time. But Stützle, man, he's just bit me too many times here lately. I don't know if I'll be able to get there.
Jake Sanderson also continues to play very, very well. $6,600. Grades out as the third best defenseman on the slate. Obviously, a pretty good projection for Brady Tkachuk as well. The 14th highest projection among forwards tonight at $8,200. But yeah, looks like a lower scoring game, not one that's going to garner a ton of my attention. Similarly, the Hurricanes and the Lightning, both teams are just so good defensively. The matchups look pretty good for the Carolina Hurricanes side of things, obviously atrocious for the Lightning side of things. The Lightning, I guess, have been a little bit leakier at 5v5 as of late, but Andre Vasilevsky's cleaned a lot of that up. Both teams on the PK have been pretty solid. The Hurricanes power play continues to be an absolute travesty. I can't see this game being super high scoring, to be honest with you. This is an 11-game slate where I'm probably not comfortable playing Carolina 3, even though they've got the best matchup. Maybe a little bit of Seth Jarvis in the mix because they do have the best offensive metrics on the team, which is so interesting. I think the one thing for me is that Oliver Bjorkstrand is going to see some ownership tonight, obviously. He is $2,500. He is projected for 12.9%. He's on the second line with Cirelli and Hagel, and he's also on the top power play unit. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to get to him for obvious reasons. I don't know how much exposure I'm going to have to the rest of this team as a whole. Maybe Bjorkstrand, Hedman mini stacks if Hedman ends up playing. The top line, 22,600. They grade out 24th. They're going to see basically the Jordan Stahl line all night long. That line shuts everybody down. So I just don't know how much I'm going to get to Tampa outside of Bjorkstrand and maybe some Hedman if he doesn't play Radish. But on the flip side, with Vasilevsky getting the start, I don't think I'm going to get to a lot of Carolina either. This is an offense that's kind of sputtering right now. They're winning hockey games, but they're not really outscoring teams. It is interesting to note that Taylor Hall and Jackson Blake are on the top line with Sebastian Aho, so they're super affordable at $15,500. But this feels like a 3-2, 2-1 hockey game type thing where no one's really optimal. I'll probably just take some of that Bjorkstrand chalk and run with it, and that's probably the extent of it for me. How about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you here. It doesn't necessarily feel like the greatest game or anything like that. Dating back to the start of the 2021-22 season, these two teams have met 11 times, only hitting the over 5.5, which is what the line is set at tonight in 4 of those games. So they've typically been a little bit of lower scoring affairs here, 1-goal, 2-goal games. There's been an odd blowout either way. There was an 8-2 win for Tampa last year. Earlier. Oh yeah. last season. And the season before that, Carolina had a 6-0 win. So, there's definitely offense that can be had here in this game. I don't know how much I'm going to get to overall in this slate. I mean, Oliver Bjorkstrand obviously looks like a great play at $2,500. Seeing a good chunk of ownership around 13% tonight. I'm fine mixing him into some lineups as a one-off guy here. I think I'll probably get to like 5% Tampa 1, 5% Tampa 2 for full stacks. And then probably the same a little bit on this Carolina side. I'll probably be a little heavier on Carolina 3 for me. Just they're a trio that I really like to hit on sometimes. And Jordan Staal and Jordan Martinook specifically make a great value play mini stack too. So I think I'm okay to getting there for a little bit of ownership tonight, but it won't be anything crazy. Probably try and cap it around 15% for full stacks from this game.
We had Pyotr Kochetkov struggling a little bit at times, not struggling, but just kind of relatively inconsistent throughout the kind of middle part of the season. His last 10 games, those 7-2-1 with a 9-10 save percentage. He's really kind of figured things out there. He's had pretty decent numbers in his career against the Lightning as well. So power plays in this game, as I mentioned, both power plays, or the Hurricanes power play really struggling, 31st over the last 10 games, going up against the 27th ranked PK, but still not a great advantage there. And then the Lightning kind of middling as of late up against a good PK. Game number 6, we've got the Jets and the Rangers. So we know the Rangers at times just completely forget how to this is good timing. Our guy Beeb says Svechnikov and Orlov both out tonight for the Carolina Hurricanes. Orlov, I think it's the second game in a row that he's missed. Svechnikov was missing from practice yesterday. He will not play this evening. I imagine Jack Roslovic moves up the lineup. I know Tyson Yost skated there yesterday, but I imagine Roslovic moves up the lineup. Could see some line shuffling, just a bunch of different combos, so we shall see. Okay, let's go back to Winnipeg and the Rangers. Let's go to the team trends again. The Rangers, just super bad defensively at 5v5. They still are not very good. They've had some better performances as of late, but then all of a sudden the Blue Jackets hang a 7 spot on them. You're like, oh yeah, the Rangers are back. The good news is for them that their PK has been solid, only giving up 3.72 goals against per 60 over the last 10. So they can maybe neutralize that Winnipeg Jets power play, which hasn't been quite as good as of late. But Winnipeg 1 still grades out third best for us tonight at 20,200. They are seeing a healthy amount of ownership. Luckily, Gabe Vilardi's price tags come down a little bit, down to 5,700. I think they're fairly priced there at 20,200. The matchup is obviously quite good. You're going to see a mix of the top 9 here for the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers, as we know, not great defensively. So this is a really good matchup for Winnipeg 1. I think that they're in a very interesting spot. They always, like most teams, they seem like a team that is a lot better on home ice. And I feel better about getting to them in Winnipeg tonight. The second line is another line that I've been getting to a lot. I've been playing a lot of second lines by the sounds of things lately. I just think that they've, shown sign of life here with Nick Ehlers at 6,100 and Cole Perfetti at 4,200. I don't mind mixing them in when they've got good matchups. Tonight seems like one of those games. Similar matchup. They're going to see a little bit more of that fourth line. That fourth line's really bad with Matt Rempe, Johnny Brodzinski, and company. So I don't mind mixing them in a little bit as well. The value is solid there at 13,900 full stack. Nemestikov's actually been pretty decent as of late as well. So don't mind getting down to them. The Winnipeg Jets definitely feel like a team that I want to have exposure to tonight. Bit of a sluggish road trip. I'm sure they'll be happy to get back home here and pick up the offense as we've seen kind of earlier in the season. One thing, Zach, that's super interesting that I noted earlier, and this is completely different or completely off topic, but I tweeted it out earlier. There are 10 lines in the NHL that have played 455 v5 minutes together. Winnipeg's top 9 is in the top 10, all 3 of them. The top line, like the continuity that they've built with these 3 lines, like they just don't change. Like it's completely different than what you see in Carolina. It seems like Rod Brind'Amour switches the lines up for fun every single game, where in Winnipeg, it's just been like, here's our lines. These are our lines for the rest of the season. This is what we're rolling with. And they've done a tremendous job. So just kind of a hat tip to them. It makes our job a little bit easier. And then they've really found a lot of success doing that this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This looks like a great spot here for the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, that top line continues to chug along offensively, but that second line has given us a lot of pause here over the last little while too. Nick Ehlers looks like he's in peak form right now. 1.3 goals per hour, 3.5 points per hour, 10.8 shots on goal per hour of ice time. Highest shot volume of any of the Winnipeg Jets forwards, which is saying something when you got a guy like Kyle Connor there. up on that top line. So really shooting the pill a lot here over the last 20 games. I'm going to be comfortable getting to, both of these lines here in Winnipeg 1 and Winnipeg 2. I also don't hate the idea of, maybe mixing a little bit of that third line. If you need some salary savings, these guys are obviously really, really cheap here. The line stats are solid. Obviously, the last little while, they haven't been the most productive offensively or anything like that. But Adam Lowry still, 1.4 goals per hour over his last 20 games. So don't hate the idea of a Lowry, Nino Ryder mini stack if you need to find some salary savings here. All three of these lines for the Winnipeg Jets, grayed out within the top 32. The top line coming in third overall, Winnipeg 3 coming in 25th, and that second line 32nd overall. So seems like a pretty nice spot here for the Winnipeg Jets. Probably try and cap it around 10% on Winnipeg 1 and mix in the second and third lines around 5% myself tonight.
With Hellebuck getting the start for the Jets, I'm assuming you don't have much interest in the Rangers. I feel like I've gone to that second line a few times and chasing that, and it just has not worked out well. The top line obviously is great, but I just don't like this road matchup. I mean, they're going to see, what is it? The matchup, I guess, isn't horrendous. We're going to see a lot of Scheifele and a lot of Lowry, but I just don't think I'm going to get to any New York tonight. Do you have any differing opinions on this one?
I think I'm okay with doing a little mini stack of that top line, a Vinny Trocheck, Artemi Panarin stack. Most of that offense is kind of going through Panarin there. Trocheck's been a little bit disappointing here as of late, but both of these guys have had some success against the Jets in their career. Trocheck, 7 goals, 12 points in 17 games played. Panarin, 8 goals and 28 points in 23 games. I think I'm okay getting a mini stack of them in at 5%. Obviously, we'll be well over the field doing so there, but nothing much more than that for me on this New York side. Will Cooley maybe at $3,500 is a value play. I think he's okay. He's had a goal and 2 points in 3 games against the Jets in his career. But beyond that, probably nothing for me from the Rangers side.
Yeah, I think that, one of the higher event games on the night, I probably have a little bit too much interest in Connor Hellebuck between the pipes to have a lot of interest in the New York Rangers. These teams did meet in Winnipeg earlier in the season, back in what would have been November. And boy, Winnipeg 1 went off. Kyle Connor, 2 goals, 3 assists. Mark Scheifele, 2 goals in that game. Velarde, 1 goal as well. So they combined for 5 goals, that top line, in a meeting with the New York Rangers earlier in the season. And it was Igor Shesterkin between the pipes. So there you have it. Power play in this one. We know that the Jets power play has been solid, but as we mentioned earlier, the Rangers PK has been pretty good, but they're a team that do take a lot of penalties. So plenty of opportunities potentially tonight for the Winnipeg Jets. Minnesota and Colorado, I'm just going to get out in front of it. I'm not playing any Minnesota. They do not score goals. Let's get to the team trend chart here. They are scoring 1.08 goals for per 60 at 5v5, and the power play has actually been pretty good. But they just don't score enough. Not a good matchup. I'm not playing any Minnesota. On the Avs side of things, we said it yesterday. It was entirely possible that Spencer Knight closed the door and kind of limited them. It happened. I mean, they didn't smash. I played Cale Makar last night. I rarely pay up for Cale Makar. I played him last night. He had 1 shot on goal. So pretty upset with him. I could have had a huge night if Cale Makar did anything. And Chushkin didn't do much. I feel like I'm going to get right back to Colorado tonight. They don't really seem to have too many quiet games in a row. The matchup is good. The Minnesota Wild, as bad as they are offensively, they've been pretty decent defensively, but the penalty kill has been atrocious. The power play matchup for the Avs tonight is the best overall. So I'm going to be focused on that power play. I'm going to focus on power play stacks tonight. I'm going to get back to Makar. I'm going to get back to McKinnon. I'm going to get back to Netchas. I'm going to get back to Nichushkin. I'm going to get back to Lehkonen. In how big of a capacity kind of remains to be seen. Probably a lot. I think it's a good matchup here. Obviously, Philip Gustafson's good, but Colorado 1 not seeing a lot of ownership tonight. McKinnon coming at 10%. Netchas just 5%. Lehkonen just 3%. And then Nichushkin is 6.7%. And then Makar is 7%. Not a lot of ownership coming in here. I'm very happy to get over the field here in what looks like a pretty good spot, despite obviously being a back-to-back here for the Avs. What do you make of them tonight? And are you playing any Minnesota?
No, I don't think I'll be playing any Minnesota. I think if I was, Matt Boldy would have to be included at $7,300. He's got a solid individual projection, 12.5 points, just tons of shot volume from him. But he's basically the only guy that shoots the puck on the Minnesota Wild. So, buyer beware there for sure. Rossi at $4,900 feels a little bit gross. Hinostroza at $3,200. I mean, I just don't know, man. I mean, I suppose you could talk me into maybe mixing in 5% mini stack, just to try and get there a little bit. It is worth noting that the field's getting there a little bit on Minnesota 1, 5% ownership for them across the board. It's nothing huge or anything like that, but worth mentioning at the very least here. Colorado, I totally agree with you. I'm going to be very heavy on the Avalanche here tonight. Be double the field on that top line, probably getting up to like 15% in my 20 max, and probably up to 10% for that second line as well. Brock Nelson, a little bit of a price dip from $7,200 down to $7K. Would like to see that number a little bit lower. I guess I can understand why DraftKings jacked it up. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Brock Nelson just in general, but there has been some good offensive production from him as of late. With his time with the New York Islanders before the trade here. But I agree. I'm getting back to the well here tonight, building around that power play. No real reservations there for me. And one thing that maybe solidifies this for me a little bit more, Phil Gustafson. You mentioned his struggles here a little bit as of late. He has been downright horseshit, dog shit, terrible against Colorado in his career. 9 games played, 1 win, 4.16 goals against average, and an 888 save percentage. So doesn't look great here for the Minnesota Wild tonight. Fire me up on this Avs team.
Yeah, I was just going to point that out too. They've met 3 times this year, and the Avs have scored 6 goals in one game and 5 goals in the other, both with Gustafson and net. Scoring has been relatively spread out in those games. McKinnon had a goal and an assist in one. Rantanen, when he was still there, had a goal and an assist in one. Ross Colton's really dominated him this year. If you're looking for a value play, apparently he really likes going up against the Wild. McKinnon had an assist in the other one. Nichushkin had a goal. This was just a couple weeks ago, February 28th. So, yeah, they've had success. They found success against Gustafson and the Wild so far this year, and I expect them to do so again tonight. Just before we move on, is the reason you'd dislike Brock Nelson? It's not his first name, correct?
No. Brock's a great first name.
Okay,
great
perfect.
First name. It's just the fact that he looks like he played in like 1927. It just
that Team USA photo was hilarious. Outrageous. Okay. Let's move on to the Ducks and the Caps. The Caps have one of the highest implied total on the night, minus 179, 3.5 implied total. The Caps are like the weirdest team ever. So when they go with the lines that we've seen for the majority of the year, they grade out unbelievably on the charts. That's Ovechkin, Strome, Protas, and McMichael, Dubois, Wilson. When they do these lines, which they do sometimes, it usually lasts like a game or two. Their numbers are horrific. Why they would ever, if they had anybody in the analytics department in Washington looking at these numbers, I would be like, let's just never do these. These are awful. I will say they graded a little bit better defensively, so maybe that's their mentality is like, okay, we're better defensively when we do this. So from that perspective, I kind of get it. But from an offensive standpoint, we're trying to get Ovechkin goals here. What are we doing? The metrics are terrible. So I'm not going to put too much stock into it because this feels like a pretty good matchup. The Ducks obviously not very good defensively. The top line for Ovechkin, 96.6 on the matchup score. Wilson's been hot. So, I'm just going to try to brush that aside. The Ducks still struggling a little bit defensively. They've been a little bit better on the PK. So I'm going to try to brush it aside. The thing is, though, when you use the charts, Washington's not going to grade out well for you. They're 21st for the second line, 30th for the top line. People are getting there on both. Mostly just Washington 1, mostly just Ovechkin. Strome and Wilson not seeing quite as much. Strome at 6%. I'll probably mix them in, but with these lines, I'm going to probably be somewhat reserved just because the numbers just tell a totally different story. Now, I'm assuming this is on the late slate this game. What time does it start? 10, yeah. So, if on the late slate they run out the old lines in warmups, I'll pivot and probably end up with quite a bit of Washington because it's just it's just outstanding how different the numbers are offensively. These are bad. They're really bad. 17 scoring chances when you have Alexander Ovechkin on your line is brutal. So with these lines, I don't have a ton of interest. With Logan Thompson getting the start, I don't have a ton of interest in the Ducks. One thing I'm going to say before I throw it to you, Zach, is I texted you, and I'm sure there's people in the chat that are going to want to play Anaheim 3 tonight because they've been on the heater of all heaters. One thing I will just caution against, in 38 minutes of 5v5 ice time with them popping off, they have shot 33%. So, yes, they've been red hot. it is so unsustainable. It's not even funny. So I will probably not be playing them. I will not be chasing that. The offensive metrics aren't great. They have averaged, they've only produced 2 expected goals. They've scored six actual goals in 38 minutes. So just firing on all cylinders. I would just caution against kind of trying to run it back with that red hot Anaheim 3 line, which grades out 43rd best at 13,200. Doesn't look like the field's really getting there. Maybe they're reading between the lines.
Yeah, pretty interesting game here for me. I kind of just want to jam in some Alex Ovechkin tonight and just kind of leave it at that. $8,400, 10 goals away from the record. He's got a hat trick in there somewhere. And I mean, they are playing against the Anaheim Ducks here, for God's sake. It's not like this is a stalwart defensive team or anything like that. Granted, they have been posting some better numbers here as of late. It feels like they're playing some of their best hockey this season. But I agree with you, man. It doesn't feel that great to full stack, this Washington side of things the way that they are. Maybe I'll go 5% Washington 1, 5% Washington 2, and then just mix in a little bit of Ovechkin one-offs or maybe a mini stack of him and Strome or something like that as well. It feels tough to get to too much more of it. And it also feels kind of tough to get to this Anaheim side of things. I mean, it's Logan Thompson in the net here tonight for Washington. Obviously, he has been absolutely just tremendous this season here for the Capitals. So I don't know if I'm going to get there much on the Anaheim side of things. I mean, I think if I was, it would definitely be around that top line. But even them, it doesn't really feel like they're scoring a whole lot here as of late as well. So I think I'm probably comfortable fading this Anaheim side of things. Maybe take a look at some of the defensemen. I think there's some guys there, obviously, that we don't mind getting to, Jackson Lacombe, Radko Gudas, Jacob Trouba. I think they're interesting plays here on this slate tonight. But I have a really hard time stacking around this Ducks team tonight.
It is worth mentioning that Logan Thompson's game has fallen off a little bit as of late. His last 8 starts dating back to the start of February, 4-2-2 with an .882 save percentage. So not the greatest goalie in the world anymore, but still he's been solid. The Capitals have the 4th best power play advantage of the night. The Ducks 18th. We got to race through these last 3 games. Vancouver and Montreal. I honestly don't have much interest in this game at all. Let's take a look here. The Vancouver Canucks have been very good defensively. They're outstanding on the penalty kill. That's where the Canadians have had to kind of rely on that power play as of late. They're not producing much offensively at 5v5. The Canucks have been very, very solid at 5v5. The matchup scores are pretty bleak across the board. I don't feel comfortable playing Vancouver. It's the lowest base game of the night. The offensive metrics don't really jump off the board, especially from the Vancouver Canucks side of things. I think the only line I would really consider in this game is Montreal 1. They've played obviously quite well. The field is getting there a little bit. Cole Caulfield 6,400, Suzuki 57, and Slavkovsky 4,900. But this is a team that just went into Calgary and got shut out by Dustin Wolf. I do think that this is a lower scoring game, and I honestly probably won't play anybody from this game outside of maybe the goalies.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't really have a whole lot of interest in this Vancouver side of things myself either. Just continuously having a difficult time finding reasons to full stack them. I don't mind the idea of a Vancouver 2 mini stack here tonight. Not the greatest matchup or anything like that. But throwing Philip Hedl and Jonathan Lekermacki out there together, not the worst idea in the world. Solid shot volume from both of these guys, and that's the reason for it. Hedl, 9.6 shots on goal per hour over his last 20. Lekermacki, granted only 3 games played in about 15 minutes, but 8.9 shots on goal per hour. 3-shot game, 2-shot game. What's interesting about Lekermacki, 2 goals and 3 points in 14 NHL games so far. In one game against Montreal earlier this year, he had a goal and an assist. So, maybe a reason there to get to him at $3,800. Won't be going, building around any other Vancouver stacks there. I don't mind the idea of getting to like 5% Montreal 1 here. Nick Suzuki's been on a little bit of a heater offensively as of late, and both him and Cole Caulfield have had success against Vancouver in their careers. For Suzuki, 7 goals and 16 points in 18 games played. For Cole Caulfield, 2 goals, 6 points in 7 games played. Obviously getting a solid floor from Cole Caulfield, 10.2 shots on hour over his last 20. Beyond that, I'm ready to move on to the next game.
Yeah, this game feels like, I might get there a little bit in the late slate, and that would be the extent of it. It's not going to draw much of my attention on the early slate. But that being said, two teams met in January, only time they've met this season. 5-4 win for Montreal. So if that kind of replicates itself, would be pretty interesting that night. Lane Hudson had a goal and 2 assists. Nick Suzuki, a goal and 2 assists. Cole Caulfield, a goal and an assist. On the Vancouver Canucks side of things, he's no longer there. JT Miller had a 4-point night. Moving on. Actually, let's take a quick look at the power plays. 7th best for the Canucks, 20th. Second worst. 3rd worst on the slate for the Montreal Canadiens. Okay, the Kings and the Islanders. Again, just going to scratch the Islanders off. I'm not going to play them. It's a tough matchup. They don't do enough offensively. I'm not playing the Islanders. They have obviously produced a decent number of expected goals for per 60 over the last 10 games, but now they've traded away Brock Nelson. There's not really a whole lot of offense left standing here in New York. That being said, the top line does grade out pretty decently offensively. The matchup, though, far from ideal for the Islanders side of things. I don't think they produce enough offense in this game to get there. On the Kings side of things, I got a lot of interest, but we're kind of back to the same old shit with the Kings where it's like, which one of these lines do you play? I do think that Andrei Kuzmenko does add an interesting wrinkle to the fold here for the LA Kings. He's now on that top line with Kempe and Kopitar, and I do think that gives you just another option to play around with. With Alex Turcotte, you kind of just looked at it and said, nah. He's going to play like 4 minutes tonight. And this was a line that had a lot of success in their first game with Andrei Kuzmenko on the line. They 18 shot attempts in 13 minutes time on ice. They led the team in terms of expected goals for per 60. They generated 8 scoring chances. So this is a line that, kind of clicked right away. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here. Andrei Kuzmenko was 3rd on the team in terms of individual expected goals in that game. He had 3 shots on goal. So I do think he adds a new wrinkle. They have the best matchup of the group. Obviously there's not a lot of stock that we can put into these metrics because he's played 1 game there. The second and third lines continue to be unbelievable. The second line is still probably my preferred target. They grade out 6th best. They're seeing next to no ownership. I love Kevin Fiala. Quentin Byfield has been a little bit cold again as of late. He's very streaky, but at $5,300, you don't have to really worry about it quite as much. Laferriere, we've seen big games from him. At this ownership level, I don't mind getting there. LA3 continues to be a great value option as well. They grade out 13th best. Like, this is just a really low-owned team tonight that I think I'm going to be overexposed to. And I'll probably sprinkle in maybe all 3 lines. It just on paper looks like a really nice matchup. This is an Islanders team giving up 3 expected goals against per 60. Their penalty kill has been absolutely atrocious. The Kings have the 20th ranked power play, so that's an issue. The one thing is, obviously, the Islanders are pretty disciplined, but their penalty kill when they do take penalties is awful. So I think there's going to be plenty of scoring chances for the Kings tonight. The problem is it's probably going to come from a variety of different sources. So it is tough to nail down, but I still prefer LA2 if I had to pick one. How about you?
Yeah, I think I agree with you there with my preference of LA2. But I got quite a bit of interest in this third line here tonight as well. I mean, Warren Fogle, former Edmonton Oiler, looking tremendous this season in LA. 10 shots on goal per hour of ice time, 1.1 goals per hour over his last 20 games. Comfortable building around a mini stack of him and Trevor Moore. For Philip Deneau, just really hasn't been there this year for him. It just felt like he has not been able to find any offensive game this season. So I think for me, I agree with you. I'm probably going to be overexposed to this King side of things. I might end up regretting it, but I think I'm comfortable throwing, a dart at 5% on LA1 and 10% on LA2 and LA3. Again, taking a little bit of a risk with how much exposure that I might be getting here to this King side of things. But it does feel like a bit of a spot to take a stand for me tonight. I think there's going to be some offense coming from this King side of things. And I think just kind of spreading around the ownership is the best way to kind of tackle it. Obviously, you get great volume from that second line with Kevin Fiala and Alex Laferriere. I think they're both fine plays here tonight as well. I'm not so sold about Kuzmenko here. He's been just too up and down for me over his career so far to really feel confident. But I think it's an okay enough spot here tonight to take a little bit of a dart throw on him. I totally agree with you on this Islanders side of things. I will have 0 Islanders in my lineups tonight.
I could play all 3 LA lines and still get them wrong. It feels that way sometimes. Every time I play the Kings, I get burned. Yeah, they're not a fun team to play without question. But their underlying metrics are strong. The matchup is solid. Like there's reason to get there when they're low owned. They're not a fun chalk team to play. And going back to Kuzmenko for a second, at $5,100, I'm probably out tonight for the most part. But if that price tag starts to come down into the $4,000 range, I'm going to be kind of back in there. Okay, San Jose and Nashville is going to be a very interesting game for this slate. Predators are minus 160, 3.5 implied total is one of the highest. The Sharks, though, have been better as of late. Coming out of the break, I don't know what's going on with them. They've given up 1.83 goals against per 60, which is insane. It's one of the best marks on the slate. 2.44 expected goals against is fantastic. The issue is their power or their penalty kill is atrocious, but the Predators' power play is atrocious. I don't know what to make of this game. Nashville's going to see some ownership. Nashville 9% on Forsberg. Sissons, though, doesn't do much for me there in the middle. Marchessault at $7K feels a little expensive. From that line, I feel like it's mostly just a Forsberg one-off for me. The top line, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Evangelista feels a little bit easier to get to. They're seeing a little bit less ownership. But the matchups in this one, number one matchup overall for Nashville too. So, obviously mixing in some Forsberg, Marchessault, Sissons, I think is fine, right? Like the underlying metrics aren't going to suggest that they're a great play. But Forsberg is who Forsberg is. There was always chat that he's just a lot of he just loves to score goals on Tuesdays. And it is Tuesday. And as somebody just pointed out in the chat, these two teams have liked to score goals against each other this season. We've had that one game back in January where what was it, like 5-1 or something, and then the Nashville Predators stormed all the way back to win 7-5. So it was 1-2-3. Yeah, it was 5. It's exactly what happened. It was 5-1. They came back to win 7-5. The next night they played again. Nashville won 6-5. So like these two teams have combined for, what is that, 12 and 11 goals. So 23 goals this season in 2 games. A lot of fun. And I'm willing to kind of just sign up for some more fireworks tonight. I think I'm going to have exposure to the top 6 of the Predators in some capacity. As we mentioned, the Kings, the Sharks penalty kill has been a nightmare. So the Predators power play grades out second best, even though they've had their own fair share of struggles. That'll probably be the route that I go with the Predators more than anything, is just trying to figure out who to play will come through this power play. So a little bit of mix of everybody. It is worth mentioning, Nick Blankenburg saw some time on the top power play unit last game. I didn't watch it. I don't know if it was because Brady Shea was in the box or something for something else that happened, but Shea saw some time there. Blankenburg saw some time there. Just kind of keep that in mind when building this evening. On the Shark side of things, I think they make it pretty easy for us with Celebrini. Like, I just don't love this Wenberg line. Foley's also a game time decision tonight. That line's had some decent success, so I don't mind getting there, but I just feel so much better about the floor that you get from Macklin Celebrini. He's been unbelievable. Klim Kostin's been a super good value play in his first couple games there. Will Smith's getting up there in price, but he's been solid. But that line projects for the highest ownership on the slate, so it's like, it's tough. 10% Klim Kostin's wild, but at $2,600, you can see why he was getting there. I think that I'm just going to try to include as much Will Smith as possible to get different in my San Jose 2 builds, because he's drawing about half as much or a third of the ownership of what Celebrini is. So that line is where most of my ownership is going to come in on the Shark side of things, but this top line is seeing a healthy amount as well. 23 goals in 2 games. Need I say more?
Not really. I think it's enough to sign me up here for some exposure to this game as well. I feel like shit having to play the Nashville Predators, but I think I got to just plug my nose and kind of do it. The issue that I have with playing Nashville here is just how expensive they are. Nashville 2, $19,900 to full stack. Nashville 1, $18,600 to full stack. Those are some pretty expensive price tags for guys that have really struggled this season to play any consistent sort of a game. I was toying around with the Philip Forsberg, Jonathan Marchessault mini stack in our head-to-head lineup tonight that we'll get to in a minute here. I ended up pivoting away from it to go to Nikita Kucherov and Macklin Celebrini, and I feel a little bit better about that. I don't know, man. I think I'm going to get some exposure here. Probably 5-10% on each of these top 6s. It doesn't feel the greatest, but it's something that I think you kind of have to do here on the slate tonight. Wenberg, I agree, feels really gross to play. The guy does have 2.1 assists per hour over his last 20 games, so he's getting on the board in ways. $3,400, kind of a plug your nose value play there. Obviously, if Tyler Toffoli can go, I love him. He's been absolutely tremendous this year. The vibes in San Jose this year, really, Brock, have just been immaculate.
As good as they could be.
Yeah, like really, right? It's funny, you look at how good the vibes are there for one of the worst teams in the league versus like what's going on in Chicago this season. It's like, oh yeah, wow, a little bit of a difference there. But this second line, I agree. I got quite a bit of interest here. Obviously, building around, Macklin Celebrini. I think I like Will Smith a little more than the public does. 5K feels a little bit expensive to me here for him, but he's had some productive games here in his last 20. Feels like he's finding his stride in the NHL. 1.1 goals per hour, 3.3 points per hour, 6.5 shots on goal per hour of ice time. I would much prefer if Tyler Toffoli was on that line there with Macklin Celebrini instead, but what can you do? So I'll still have some exposure to Toffoli here tonight. Obviously a game time decision, but there's some pivot options you can get to from the LA Kings side of things at similar price points tonight as well. Just if you are building around Toffoli, just make sure to keep that in mind.
So, Celebrini just shooting the puck at will. Since the break, 36 shots in 8 games, 8 points in that stretch. Steven Stamkos, I mean, basically doubled his entire production from the season in his last 3 games. 4 points, 4 goals, 4 assists for 8 points in 3 games. I mean, he's alive. Who would have thought? He's still pretty decent at hockey. So, nice to see him kind of wake back up. We'll see how that continues, but we don't got much time left here. As I mentioned, the Predators do have the second best power play advantage, but the Sharks look okay as well. Definitely going to be sprinkling in this game. It's hard to really pinpoint who, but mostly Celebrini. Line for me from San Jose, and then a mix of the power play for the Preds. Okay, let's get to some defensemen really quickly, Zach. Some of my favorites tonight, Gustav Forsling is going to see an additional ice time tonight, so if you can't quite get up to Seth Jones, I would prefer Seth Jones, but Forsling at 4K is fine. Victor Mancini grades out really well. I don't actually think I'm going to play much of him, though. Luke Hughes, I really like. Seth Jones, I had already mentioned. Not a lot of guys that I really love. Keandre Miller always seems like a fine play right now, given the minutes that he's playing for the Rangers. Nick Blankenberg, I just mentioned, is fine. Darren Radish, if he ends up playing, or Victor Hedman doesn't end up playing, obviously that will spike him up a little bit. Man, there's not a lot of guys that are really cheap that I like today. It's more like that 4K range for me is probably where I'm going to live. In terms of expensive guys, I'm definitely going to get back to Makar, as I mentioned earlier. I'm going to get to some Rowensky. I'm going to get to some Sanderson. Probably going to get to some Hannafin as well. How about you tonight, Zach?
Yeah, I think you hit on a couple of good guys. Gustav Forsling, I really like him at 4K here tonight. This is a guy, it always feels like he steps up when Aaron Ekblad's out of the lineup. Jake Middleton at 4K, I think, is a nice play. Timothy Liljegren, I'm also could be, count me in on him tonight. One other guy that is really jumping out to me, Braden Schneider, $2,900. Bit of a price drop from the mid 3K range, even though he's still productive with some good shot volume and block volume as well.
Let's sort by ownership really quickly. That's what I wanted to do. Some of the cheap guys. So as I mentioned, Luke Hughes, Seth Jones among the highest owned. Your guy Timothy Liljegren there as well. Olin Zellweger drawing a decent chunk of ownership. Lane Hudson, Neil Pionk, Jackson Lacombe. Okay, goalies. Darcy Kemper projects to be the best goalie overall. Sees a decent amount of shot volume, one of the lowest totals against on the slates. I think that makes sense. Kemper seems like a strong play. I mentioned liking Bobrovsky earlier. He's got one of the highest implied win percentages tonight. Not going to see a ton of volume against the Bruins. I mean, that team still is capable of producing a decent amount of volume, especially whenever you got David Pastrnak, it is possible. But I think that's going to be a big game for Bobrovsky to keep that one low scoring. Don't mind paying up for him. Where I have some concerns about Saros at 8,400. Logan Thompson, I think you have the same volume concerns as you do with Bob. Markstrom, I think, is risky. Obviously, the Blue Jackets have been quite good. So Bob just feels like the safest kind of pay-up option. I'm not paying up for Samsonov. I don't mind paying up for Blackwood, but you got the exact same volume concerns there. So that's kind of my reasoning to get behind Bob tonight. Darcy Kemper, I think, makes a lot of sense too. Forsberg's obviously, feels somewhat shaky. He's not the most consistent, but he's been better as of late. Pretty good matchup there. Vasilevsky is a guy that should see just oodles of volume against the Hurricanes tonight. This is a Hurricanes team that loves to shoot the puck and also has not been scoring that many goals as of late. I think Vasilevsky makes sense as one of the highest owned goalies on the slate, one of the best plays overall. Really like Vasilevsky tonight. Same thing goes for Connor Hellebuck. As we get down, dumpster diving a little bit, with Vasilevsky being $7,600, I don't know how much I'm going to, dip my toe into the super cheap water tonight. But if I had to, probably Elvis Merzlikins at $7,100 would be my choice. The Blue Jackets obviously capable of winning this game. No Jack Hughes for the Devils. This is a really nice spot, I think, for Elvis Merzlikins. If you need to pay down, that would be my preferred choice. How about you, Zach?
For me, I think my 4 favorites are in no particular order: Sergei Bobrovsky, Mackenzie Blackwood, Connor Hellebuck, and Darcy Kemper. Kemper at $7,900 looks like a great value play here on this slate in the crease. I can get behind some Vasilevsky at $7,600. Count me in for a little bit of Forsberg as well. That's probably where I'm going to be keeping most of my ownership here tonight. I don't really see a need to get too dumpster divey here on this slate tonight.
Before we get into the hat trick pick challenge and our DFO head-to-head lineup challenge, if you're watching right now, we've got over nearly 1,400 live viewers across all platforms right now. If you're watching on YouTube specifically, please smash that like button. But any thing will help. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. If anybody's playing in the 555 tonight, best of luck. Hopefully, we have a viewer that turns $555 into 200,000. Would absolutely love to see that. We've had some massive winners popping up in the DFO DFS Discord. So best of luck tonight. Let's get to today's head-to-head lineup challenge. I won yesterday, bringing my record to 36 and 35 on the season. I went with the Glass Brat Luke Hughes stack, as I mentioned earlier. I also went with the Bjorkstrand one-off. I also went with the Celebrini Costin mini stack, and then the mini stack of Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon to round things out. Seems kind of fun. And then, as I mentioned, I just wanted to kind of lock up that W with Sergei Bobrovsky at $8,200 and figured that Zach was not going to play him because we played the same goalie a lot recently. So I was trying to get a little different from the field here, and the field being Zach.
Nice. I like it. Going with Darcy Kemper in the crease. Mentioned him as a really nice looking value play here on this slate tonight. Got a little different with my lineup here tonight. Got a one off of Cody Glass at $2,500. A little bit of different correlation here for a couple of these guys. McKinnon and Nichushkin, obviously on different 5-on-5 lines, correlate well on the power play together. Same thing with Oliver Bjorkstrand and Nikita Kucherov. Obviously on different lines, but correlating on that top power play unit. Gustav Forsling at 4K. I think he's a great play here tonight on this slate. I'm fine getting down to $2,500 Victor Mancini. See if he can rekindle some of the magic he had earlier this year for us when he was with the New York Rangers.
Let's get to today's daily face-off hat trick pick challenge. If you want to participate in today's hat trick pick challenge, it is free to enter. All you got to do is drop your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube, not the live chat. If your player scores a hat trick, which there's plenty to choose from tonight, we'll get you a $25 gift card to nationgear.ca. You can pick up some daily face-off swag, some sweaters, some hats, whatever you prefer. If a player scores a hat trick that nobody picks, we will raffle it off to anybody that submitted a pick. So since I won yesterday's head-to-head, I will go first. My hat trick pick tonight is gonna be give me Macklin Celebrini.
Love it. Give me the grade 8 Alex Ovechkin.
Very nice. So again, if you want to participate, comment your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube. While you're there, please smash that like button. And shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for today's show. If you want to get $20 off your first month of Rotogrinders Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Also in the description is the link to our DFO DFS Discord. Come join the community. We chat DFS all day long. We also provide any of the late breaking news and warm-ups, any injury news, any goalie changes, any line changes, anything like that. Somebody's in there dropping that information so you don't have any dead spots in your lineup. Best of luck tonight, especially if you're playing in the big contest. Hopefully we can crown a winner tonight. Over nearly 1,400 people today, so smash that like button for us as well. We'll be back for a much smaller slate tomorrow. And as always, if you're new to the show, we do this live every single day, 4:30, 4:45 p.m. Eastern start time, Monday through Friday. Also on Friday, we just give away $50 to Nation Gear. So if you want to pick up some DFO swag to support the brand, we just give away $50 to somebody that comments in the live chat. So best of luck tonight. See you back here tomorrow. Until then, cheers.